So in line with this the chairpersonship, we will see that South Africa could host a STI forum, intersessional regional meeting on STI for the SDGs, and possibly use such a meeting to motivate for the establishment of a regional committee on STI for the SDGs. And just to say, this is proposals, it's not, we've just taken over chairpersonship, so this will be discussed in the next meetings. At a continental level, South Africa will assume vice chairpersonship of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science and Technology, and in partnership with the United Nations Economic Commission on Africa, which has already initiated continental discussions on STI for the Sustainable Development Goals. South Africa could also then motivate for a continental STI for SDGs program that will be supported by an STI advisory committee. So these are all, in terms of our international partnerships and relationships, things that we would want to take forward in terms of a coordinating role. Because besides South Africa doing what we can, we need to, from an African perspective and a Southern African perspective, also make sure that in the implementation of that, because if our neighbors are not achieving developmental targets, it affects us, as we know. Because then people come here. But what it's really important for us as a region and as a continent to develop together. So this coordination at a global and continental level is very, very important for us. So in terms of influencing the UN Science STI for SDGs Forum, the discussion and discussions at the UN level, it is so we will participate within these and propose to the minister on various levels, but I won't go into that now. So we want to create an advanced interface with the Global Innovation Exchange, and the Sustainable Development Knowledge Hub is just one such mechanisms. These different forums that we're talking about at the continental and regional level are going to be, and at the national level, will also be very important. And we really need to ensure that besides just participating in these meetings, we really need to showcase what we are doing at a national and a continental level, so that we not always seem to be lagging behind. We are doing some really interesting work. I think some of the problem sometimes is in communicating about what we do. And I think this kinds of forums where you have people sitting from different is going to be also important in trying to create that awareness about what South Africa and Africa is doing in this. So I just wanted to give that. But also just to give you a background, in terms of this, there's ongoing discussions on various levels. For example, resourcing for this is quite important. So we're discussing within the UN system around possibly working with philanthropy and the private sector in finding out, because the public-private partnerships are going to be quite important, philanthropy and private sector and government coming together to see where there are gaps in what is currently not being done in South Africa and Africa, how do we find the resources in order to plug those gaps. So for example, there are mechanisms now called the Sustainable Development Goals philanthropy platforms, which are being established in different countries in the world. And currently I'm in discussions with both nationally but also with our international interlocutors on how we could possibly, in partnership with philanthropy and private sector, start such a platform here. Kenya, Ghana, Indonesia, Colombia, India, and the United States have such platforms. And what it does is that besides government and the private sector, philanthropy, local philanthropy, individuals, high net worth individuals are also supporting programs that are doing some very good work in addressing these sustainable development goals. But then again, it's the coordination. We don't know what each other is doing, but what these platforms do is try to understand what the different actors are doing, where there is enough coverage. Okay, that's great. How do we communicate that? but then also identifying where there's duplication, and instead of spending more money in an area where there is already money being spent, instead let's look at where there are gaps and trying to coordinate the funding to go. So the philanthropy platform would be a partnership between government, philanthropy, and the private sector to see what the different actors are doing, and then to identify how do we mobilize resources into the areas where it is most needed. But in terms of policy advice as well, this is going to be quite important, because sitting within these institutions, both within the private sector and philanthropy, there are key pockets of really important advice related to how do we address the SDGs that we really need to tap into. And so I think this partnership between the public sector and the private sector, including philanthropy and multinational corporations, is going to be a big focus of the kind of work I'm doing in terms of mobilizing international resources. So from the Department of Science and Technology, thank you for the opportunity, and yes, I will take any comments.
Let's give a round of applause first.